For my critical incident, I will be talking about suicide. This is my friend Duncan. He took his own life on September 1st of 2019. Duncan was a student at this school, the University of Michigan Flint, and had just started his studies here last fall. I lived in the same dorms with him at First Street, and we quickly became friends after I met him, through my boyfriend. My roommates and I were informed about his death on September 3rd, but at the time, we didn't know it was suicide. All we knew was that Duncan was gone. After his first semester at U of M Flint, Duncan decided to join the National Guard, and he was gone all of winter semester to begin his training. Me and my friends made efforts to keep in contact with him, and he seemed to be doing well. He was enjoying training, and over the summer, he even adopted a cat and named it Pickles. About 2 weeks before he died, he texted my friend and roommate Kendall, asking if there was still room to move into Riverfront Residence Hall. She said yes, and he put in his application. He died on move-in day. An important factor in Duncan's case was his issue with addiction. As college students, it's easy to overlook somebody who frequently drinks or smokes because we're in college and everyone seems to be doing it. In Duncan's situation, his addiction wasn't apparent when you first looked at him. This substance abuse was probably also linked to some sort of mental illness such as anxiety or depression, but this was never made public. This was something that many realized was probably an issue after his death, but at that point, it was too late. These are some of the suicide statistics in the United States. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of deaths in the U.S. for all ages, but it's the 3rd leading cause of death for young people from 15 to 24 years old. Every day, approximately 123 Americans die by suicide. There is one death by suicide in the U.S. every 12 minutes. Depression affects 20 to 25% of Americans ages 18 and over in a given year. Suicide takes the lives of over 44,965 Americans every year. The highest suicide rates in the U.S. are among whites, American Indians, and Alaska Natives. Suicide among males is 4 times higher than among females. Male deaths represent 79% of all U.S. suicides. More than 90% of people who fall victim to suicide suffer from depression, have a substance abuse disorder, or both. So some of the important diversity differences in Duncan's case are race. He is a white male, and I would say his disability was his addiction and depression. So these are the 5 different perspectives of multiculturalism. The first is the conservative perspective. It was his fault that he committed suicide instead of dealing with his issues in a different manner. The liberal perspective. Addiction and suicidal thoughts are something that we all have dealt with. I know exactly how he felt. The pluralist. If he would have worked harder to get better, then he wouldn't have taken his own life. The essentialist. We shouldn't speak on his behalf because we don't know what he was going through. Only he has the right to address it. And critical. Suicide has a lot to do with a person's circumstances and diversity. Race and gender play a big role in this issue. Some of the ways that we can prevent suicide and be the voice for those who have taken their lives. The first way we can do this is by knowing the signs. Some of the signs are threats or comments about killing themselves, also known as suicidal ideation, can begin with seemingly harmless thoughts like, I wish I wasn't here, but can become more overt and dangerous. Increased alcohol and drug use, aggressive behavior, social withdrawal from friends, family, and the community, dramatic mood swings, talking, writing, or thinking about death, impulsive or reckless behavior, putting their affairs in order and giving away their possessions, saying goodbye to friends and family, mood shifts from despair to calm, planning, possibly by looking around to buy, steal, or borrow the tools they need to complete suicide, such as a firearm or prescription medication. A family history of suicide. Substance abuse. Drugs and alcohol can result in mental highs and lows that exacerbate suicidal thoughts. Intoxication. More than 1 in 3 people who die from suicide are found to be currently under the influence. Access to firearms. A serious or chronic medical illness. Gender. Although more women than men attempt suicide, men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide. A history of trauma or abuse. Prolonged stress. Isolation. Age. People under age 24 or above age 65 are at a higher risk for suicide. A recent tragedy or loss. Agitation and sleep deprivation. Another way you can prevent suicide is by knowing the resources. If you or someone you know is in an emergency, you can call 911 immediately. If you are in a crisis or are experiencing difficult or suicidal thoughts, call the National Suicide Hotline. If you're uncomfortable talking on the phone, you can also text NAMI to this number to be connected to a free trained crisis counselor on the crisis text line. As social workers, we should all know the signs and be willing to help anyone who might be experiencing depression or problems with addiction. We need to be able to spread awareness to families so they can know the signs and catch them early enough to prevent a suicide from happening. It's also important to know the statistics to know who is more at risk.
Now, you were very young when you were diagnosed, weren't you? You were 24 when you were diagnosed with depression. And how was it affecting you, not just when you were diagnosed, but in the lead up to it?
In the lead up to it, see, the thing about it is that how do you know you're depressed? That was the kind of thing for me, was that the lead up to actually being diagnosed. I don't know how long I've been depressed for, because, you know, you're in that kind of zone and that bubble. So leading up to it was really, really difficult, because there's certain signs that you might tell looking at me, but I don't really know about.
See.
Yeah, and I just think I feel different and feel...
And it's hard, isn't it? Because on the surface, it was hard for those of us who are lucky enough not to have suffered from depression. Your life looked good. You had a girlfriend, everything seemed fine, but you never felt you could reach out and talk to those people about how you felt.
Yeah, because it kind of, what it done is almost make you feel like you're the enemy. That's what it does. It gets inside your mind, and it will pull you apart bit by bit, and it convinces you that you shouldn't be talking about this, and that's what's wrong, is that you should be, because a lot of people are going through the same thing, so you need to talk about it, but it just convinces you that you shouldn't, and that you're the bad guy.
Now, it was your girlfriend. You did get to such a low state that you tried to take your own life, didn't you? And it was your girlfriend that mercifully found you and saved you.
Yeah, it was. You know, I did never think that I would get to that stage. You know, I had minor thoughts, when it wasn't so much thinking about how I would do things or anything like that. It was more thinking, I wonder what would happen if I just did. Would anyone miss me? I always thought that, because a lot of people say about suicide is that it's a selfish act. I can't believe people would do that. So selfish. What about the family? And what people need to think about is that to that person, in that frame of mind, at that very moment, that's the best thing they can think of. Me personally, when I went through that, I thought, if I do this, I'm a burden to a lot of people. If I do this...
Everyone's better off without you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was selfless, really. I was thinking this will be the best option. Obviously, when you get out of it, that's when you realise how wrong you are.
Sam, is he alone in this? Because I was so shocked that it's the biggest single killer of men under 50. Suicide.
Absolutely, and no, sadly, Jake's not alone in this at all. It is quite common. You know, we know that 1 in 4 people experience mental health problems such as depression, and we know that depression itself is likely to be the leading disease causer worldwide by 2020. So particularly in young men, what Jake describes is sadly very common indeed.
You've turned it around. This was all 9 months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So in a relatively short space of time, things are looking much better for you. How did you do it?
By talking about it. Honestly, as easy as that. The best thing I ever done was kind of just announce on Twitter what I had done, what I'd been through, and as soon as I done that, I just felt a huge weight lifted,
Right.
and it was the impact of the people coming to me and saying, I've been through the same thing. I thought I was alone, and that's what opened my eyes then, is I thought, how many people are going through this? So that's why I want to promote it as much as possible, because we need to be talking about it. The more you talk, potentially more lives you can save.
And hopefully somebody watching who may be feeling terrible will hear what you're saying this morning and take that step to reach out. And Sam, if we can't reach the people who are in the state of depression, what are the signs for those around them to look out for to help them get help?
Sure, there are lots of signs. Obviously, it's different for each individual, but things like withdrawing from activities and things that you'd normally find enjoyable, so not following hobbies anymore, for example, not speaking to friends, not speaking to family, perhaps isolating yourself in your own room, and just, obviously seeming very sad, very emotional, those kind of things. It can be quite hard to tell, particularly in men who may not want to talk about it, but if you do see someone who is starting not to be their normal self, not to speak to you like they once would, to lock themselves away, that kind of thing.
Okay, very, very good advice. Thanks for coming to tell us your story, and I know you're off on a comedy career now, so good luck with that. That's fantastic news, and thanks for telling us your story this morning. And if you would like any help or information on what we've been discussing here, then do visit our website, itv.com/Lorraine. Lots of help and advice there.